Education Head, Dr. Cheripin Barbacena. Good morning. We are the researchers from the BSIE HA4A. My name is Janice Fornea Sapuga, and together with me, my co-proponents, Raquel Ventura and Katrina Quiroga, and with our thesis advisor, Dr. Cheripin Barbacena. An education for the 21st century is one that responds to the rapid economic, technological, and societal changes. It's an education that prepares students to succeed in a world that equips with them the skills and competencies necessary to thrive in the 21st century, according to Hallerman 2019. This is the inspiration of the researcher in conducting the study entitled Enhancing Career Skills, a supplemental learning module for supervised industrial training at Technological University of the Philippines, Manila. The primary goal of every school is to produce competent students who are prepared for their future careers, according to Jackson 2022. Similar to the main goal of CHED, which is to give tertiary students in the Philippines who are enrolled in higher education institutions the chance to gain practical knowledge and skills, as well as the good values and attitudes in well-known businesses and industries. This SIT, which is an experiential learning opportunity, provides students with a valuable opportunity to network and establish vital professional connections before graduating from college, according to VNI 2022. During the supervised industrial training of the CIE undergraduates at Technological University of the Philippines from July to September 2022, the researchers observed that there is no available learning material for supervised industrial training that can be used as training material. According to the researchers' experience and observation to the co-trainees, there are instances which trainees lack a daily objective and guide due to the unavailability of the instructional tool. Without learning material, students cannot learn to their fullest potential, according to Mafea 2020 and according to Adigwe of MNO 1 2018 in the training process factors as training quality, the quality of the training materials, and the training environment are essential before beginning a training program, and these factors should be considered. In response to this concern, as one of the stakeholders of education, the researchers were motivated to develop supplemental learning materials, specifically a module for supervised industrial training, to ensure that students acquire the necessary knowledge, skills, and attitude. According to Coleman 2022, the supplemental learning material will expedite and enhance trainees' knowledge and skills development. It will provide trainees with information that is easily accessible, accelerated learning, and opportunities to develop their knowledge and skills. This will also ensure that trainees and trainers meet the PQF or Philippine Qualification Framework Standard. According to TESDA 2012, the PQF describes the level of educational qualifications, the official recognition of a person's learning achievements. PQF is essential because it describes whether or not a trainee is job ready.
Now let's proceed to the objectives of the study. The researchers focus on producing, evaluating, and validating a supplemental learning module for supervised industrial training. The module aims to provide trainees with readily available material, quicker learning opportunities, and opportunities to build their skills needed in the workplace. Specifically, this study aims to analyze the proposed content of syllabus and supplemental learning module for supervised industrial training based on the learners' expectations, CIE third-year students, trainees' experience as CIE undergraduates and graduates, supervisors' experiences, administrators and coordinators' experiences, CHED memorandum, TUP memorandum, and training regulation of TESDA. Produce a course syllabus and validate it with subject matter experts with the following elements: institutional outcomes, program description, program outcomes, course content, course outcome, and course evaluation. Produce a supplemental learning module for supervised industrial training with the following elements: rationale, objectives, learning outcomes, content, and assessment. Determine the level of appropriateness of the developed supplemental learning module for supervised industrial training with the following elements: content, discussion, and assessment. Determine the level of validity of produced supplemental learning module for supervised industrial training in terms of content, language, presentation, assessment, and suitability. The researchers utilize mixed method research design according to Gay et al. 2012. This research design is a combination of quantitative and qualitative approaches. A qualitative descriptive research design is when an easy depiction of event or experience is sought. The design-based research, or the DBR, was used as the guide of the study. To determine the appropriateness and validity of the module, the researchers collected the data using quantitative descriptive research design.
For the study participants are the supervised industrial training stakeholders, 15 third-year student, 43 fourth-year student, 12 alumni, 4 coordinators, 10 supervised HT, and 2 administrators and subject matter experts. The researcher interviewed the stakeholders regarding their expectation and experiences in supervised industrial training. The 5 subject matter experts evaluate the appropriateness of components in the 2 administrators validate the course syllabus and the supplemental learning module for supervised industrial training at the Technological University of the Philippines. Now, may we present to you the instrument used in the study. The main data gathering instrument in the study is a researcher-made interview and the JAP and modified questionnaire that was examined, checked, and validated by the subject matter experts and tools from existing studies to seek approval to use the tools. During the analysis phase of the process, the researcher conducted an interview with the stakeholders to determine their expectation or experiences to collect information for the supplemental learning module content. The researcher used a paper interview and computer-based interview depending on the convenience of the participants to gather the data easier. To assess the supplemental learning module components appropriateness, a tool was adapted from Ms. Geraldine Gallardo titled Development and Validation of a Self-Learning Module in Horticultural Production, while the Learning Module Validation Instruments are derived from the June 2021 publication entitled Development, Effectiveness, and Acceptability of a Module for the Problem-Solving and the Critical Thinking Skills of an Alternative Learning System in the District of Tanay 2 by Mr. Aniver Vergara. The evaluation and validation of the tools is performed by the expert and the administration of supervised industrial training. The ADAPT instruments are modified according to the needs of the study. Now, the study data analysis. First, the data analysis used in a qualitative. The information gathered from the interview and a survey on the expectation and experience of stakeholders are analyzed using thematic analysis, which is a technique for analyzing qualitative data. Typically, it refers to a collection of text such as an interview or transcript. The researcher closely examines the data to identify common themes, recurring topics, concepts, and meaning patterns according to Caulfield 2022. The researchers employed data saturation on the collected information. It is necessary to achieve data saturation. It is reached when there is sufficient information to replicate the study, when the ability to obtain new information has been attained, and when further coding is no longer possible. So, the next quantitative analysis is the course syllabus and supplemental learning module are evaluated and validated by the experts, coordinators, and administrators. The data collected by the researcher are presented in tables, and descriptive analysis are used to summarize the data for level appropriateness of components and level of validity of the supplemental learning module. The themes that merge in the study providing answer to this objective one analyze the proposed contents of syllabus and supplemental learning module for supervised industrial training based on the following: learners' expectations, CIE third-year students, trainees' experiences, CIE undergraduates and graduates, supervisor experiences, administrators and coordinator experiences, host establishment.
For the level of appropriateness of the developed supplemental learning module for supervised industrial training in terms of content, in this study, a supplemental learning module is supervised industrial training was developed by the researchers to provide trainees with readily available material, quicker learning opportunities, and opportunities to build their skills needed in the workplace. The level of appropriateness of the developed self-learning module in supervised industrial training was determined by the weighted mean and described in terms of its components such as content, discussion, and assessment. For the level of appropriateness of the developed supplemental learning module for supervised industrial training in terms of discussion, the result shows that in terms of discussion, experts evaluated the learning of the appropriateness of the developed supplemental learning module in supervised industrial education is appropriate, shown by the grand mean 4.45. This means that the discussion of the supplemental learning module in supervised industrial education were appropriately developed as perceived by the experts. And for the level of appropriateness of the developed supplemental learning module for supervised industrial training in terms of assessment, the result shows that in terms of assessment, experts evaluated the level of appropriateness of the developed supplemental learning module in supervised industrial education as appropriate, shown by the grand mean 4.37. This means that the assessment of the supplemental learning module in supervised industrial education was appropriately developed as perceived by the experts.
For the level of validity of produced supplemental learning module, the result shows that in terms of content, experts evaluated the level of appropriateness of the developed supplemental learning module in supervised industrial training as valid. Shown by the grant mean 4.25, this means that the contents of the supplemental learning module in supervised industrial training were valid as perceived by the respondents. For the level of validity of developed supplemental learning module, the result shows that in terms of language, experts evaluated the level of appropriateness of the developed supplemental learning module in supervised industrial training as valid. Shown by the grant mean of 4.25, this means that the language of the supplemental learning module in supervised industrial training was validated as perceived by the respondents. For the level of validity of developed supplemental learning module, the result shows that in terms of presentation, experts evaluated the level of appropriateness of the developed supplemental learning module in supervised industrial training as valid. Shown by the grant mean 4.20, this means that the presentation of the supplemental learning module in supervised industrial training was validated as perceived by the respondents. For the level of validity of the developed supplemental learning module, the result shows that in terms of suitability, experts evaluated the level of appropriateness of the developed supplemental learning module in supervised industrial training as valid. Shown by the grant mean of 4.10, this means that the suitability of the supplemental learning module in supervised industrial training is validated as perceived by the respondents.
Derived from the findings of the study, the following conclusion were drawn. The proposed content of syllabus and supplemental learning module are supervised industrial training are communication, collaboration, teamwork, critical thinking skills, problem solving, lifelong career skills, and entrepreneurial skills. The researcher produced a course syllabus with the following elements: institutional outcome, program description, program outcomes, course content, course outcome, and course evaluation. The researcher produced a supplemental learning module with the following elements: rationale, objectives, learning outcomes, content, and assessment. The appropriateness of components of supplemental learning module are as follows: the content is appropriate, the discussion is appropriate, the assessment is appropriate, and the validity of produced supplemental learning module are as follows: the content is valid, the language is valid, the presentation is valid, and the suitability is valid.
Based on the findings and conclusions, the following recommendations were formulated. The SIT trainees are suggested to use the supplemental learning module and apply it in supervised industrial training. The researchers suggested to practice the skills mentioned in the supplemental learning module during the supervised industrial training. The SIT coordinators, supervisors, and administrators are suggested to use a hard syllabus and implement the supplemental learning module to all trainees, then assess if it is effective. The host training establishment or cooperating firms may use this study to know what knowledge, skills, and attitudes trainees need to learn and to ensure that all competencies will be possessed by the trainees. The future researchers have suggested to better test the supplemental learning module, improve the study by gathering information for adding participants to administrators and coordinators, and improve the learning module by inserting video links, specifying definitions, using procedural modeling, and inserting a summary and review at the end of the lesson.